back. I was the one sending out these bids, and I'd
Yeah.
get back rates that were just
All over the place, huh?
all over the place. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I remember specifically a load coming out of like Salinas, California, going to Pennsylvania, and it was a load of oranges or some fruit, and I had brokers give me back rates that were varying by over $1,000. I was like, how the hell is this possible? Like, what is going on here? And then, from a shipper standpoint, I'm questioning now, what does this broker know the industry?
Welcome to the ThinkFreight podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Wardine, and it's my pleasure to announce today's guest, Kevin Miles from Eureeka BI. Kevin, welcome to the ThinkFreight podcast. How are you today, man?
I'm doing great, Tommy. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on. I love the Yankees hat you're repping today. It's definitely glasses and hat day. It's Friday, so we're gonna lock in here, and we're gonna have an awesome podcast, man. So thanks for coming on. I want to highlight something real fast. You guys were recently partnered with truckstop.com. Congratulations. That's really an awesome a feat for a smaller company like you guys, and just wanted to throw that out there right off the rip and congratulate you guys, man.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of just dive right in, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up eventually creating your own company with Eureeka, but how did you find yourself, in freight? What got you started in the freight and transportation industry?
Yeah, no, thanks. So I went to school for engineering, and it was manufacturing back in the day. And then I kind of saw the shift happening with a lot of manufacturing going overseas.
Yeah.
Ended up working at UPS for a while.
Okay.
And kind of got my feet wet with small parcel package delivery, helping with forecasting, and just really started to enjoy transportation, all the stuff in supply chain, and got really good experience just working there. I remember early on, one of the things they do really well is get people involved with what they're actually trying to train people on, or in my case, it was creating these plans for how long it should take to unload a truck, for example, how long it should take to load it. And literally right out of school, one of the things I was doing was loading and unloading trucks. So when I gave out or provided these operating plans, it was like, well, if you say that it can be done in this amount of time, you got to go out and prove it yourself too. So there was a lot of that hands-on experience, which was great starting out. Transitioned from there and went over to Ahold USA, which is now Ahold Delhaize, big, large retail grocery company. Yeah. And that's where I got my real chops and experience with logistics, managed some logistics for that company, had control over a few different distribution centers, warehouses, and was working with a lot of different brokers, and just saw some of the challenges with pricing and how do you handle different seasonalities and cycles and market conditions. And what I found when I talked to brokers and large carriers is that they all kind of did it a different way. They looked at different factors, and I would get back. I was the one sending out these bids, and I'd get back rates that were just
all over the place, huh?
All over the place, exactly. Yeah. So I remember specifically a load coming out of like Salinas, California, going to Pennsylvania, and it was a load of oranges or some fruit, and I had brokers give me back rates that were varying by over $1,000. I was like, how the hell is this possible? Like, what is going on here? And then, from a shipper standpoint, I'm questioning now, what does this broker know the industry? Do they know what they're doing?
It throws a lot of questions into the play, right? You don't if you got 5 different brokers and they're all giving you 5 different, entirely different spot market rates, or you've got 3 out of 5 giving you inline rates of 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, and then another broker telling you 9,500. It's well, wait a minute, is it just like this guy doesn't know reefer, he doesn't know this market, doesn't know Pennsylvania, or does he just not know produce? Does he not know what he's doing? Is he just shooting in the dark? So yeah, it kind of makes you like question. It also makes you think, okay, is there a shift in the market? Did he see something ahead of time? Did he know something ahead of time? Am I going to give this to someone else for whatever rate, 8K, 7K, and then get screwed and end up actually having to pay more? So it's like it makes you start to question. I was actually had another logistics manager on yesterday, Matthew Chapa. Him and I were talking about a lot of like those similar type things, right? It's like, am I getting screwed? Like, what is the actual, what is actually happening here? Like, why are these rates so different? And it just like, just from your perspective too, it just kind of makes you start to question exactly what's happening in the market, or whether the broker even knows what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And one caveat there is like, these were bids that were going to be 3, 6 months
Okay,
out.
so
So
these are even longer. These
these are
aren't even like
contract,
spot. Yeah,
right?
this isn't even stuff like I need a truck today. So this is like longer term.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Which adds some complexity, right? So I kind of get it, but
Yeah.
even still, there was. So yeah, going back to your question, right? So I saw some opportunity there, and after talking to enough brokers, saying, yeah, this is really tough, and it takes a lot of time, hell of a lot of
It
time
does.
to do these bids that are thousands of lines long, and they've got 3-digit zip, some got 5-digit zip, some have a city or state. They're just all over the place, and no two bids are the same. I haven't seen any that are
No.
exactly the same yet. All right,
Yeah.
and so there was an opportunity in terms of just efficiency, completing them, and helping with forecasting rates. So that's where I took the leap and got into this business.
That's really awesome, man. So, have you always been, I'll ask this first. So, have you always been entrepreneurial? Like, have you always knew like that you were going to start your own thing? Like, what was that process like? Was it like, oh, I just see an issue and I'm going to try and tackle it? Or was it more like I always knew, but this was just the right timing, right opportunity?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think I always knew, and then it was timing that came into play as well. So I
Yeah.
remember getting out of school, and me and my buddies wanted to one of the first businesses was like promoting clubs and bars. So right
That's funny.
back in the day, a couple of my buddies, we started promoting clubs for different places
Yeah.
in where we grew up. And so we'd go to the owner, ask him, "Hey, you're having a show. Can we bring somebody to headline? Can we help
Mm,
out?" And then take something from the door. And we started creating flyers. We were doing all this
awesome.
promotion. We were getting on the radio. So I think there was always an entrepreneurial spirit inside. Did some stuff with real estate at one point. So I've
Interesting.
always had that bug. And then never was really that fond of corporate America and some of just the bureaucracy and things I
Yes.
saw. And again, it was also just good opportunity, good timing, where there was a lot of data that was now available. A lot of folks didn't understand how to use it, what to do with it. And so we were able to, or I was able to take a look at, hey, is there something that I can glean off of all this data and help companies, again, just complete some of these bids?
It's interesting you said how valuable data is. As we move and march closer to like, and not even closer to anything, it's just like the way the world is moving. We're moving towards more automation. We're moving towards more tech. Um, I heard this maybe a year or so ago, and when I was with Freight Waves, and someone had told me, I don't remember who it was, but they were a pretty big data expert, and they said data in 3 years is going to be more valuable than oil. Do you agree with that?
I do. Yes. I mean, data is the new oil. New oil was one of those little cliches or phrases that
Yeah.
came out a while ago when big data was the term. Um, and people just need to realize, or were trying to figure out how to harness it and what to do with it. They had a lot of data, but I definitely see that as I talk to folks each week. Some are trying to figure out, what do I do with my data? How do I use it? I know it's valuable. It's kind of my secret sauce, or it's
Right.
proprietary. Large brokers, large 3PLs trying to figure out what to do with it. Others, I think there's no lack of data now, no lack of access to data. So you can get it by going out and going to third party
Yeah.
vendors and getting it, somehow,
Yeah.
some
There's
way.
plenty of data brokers out there where if you need data or specific data, you can probably find it through a third party, a broker, or someone like that who has access to a lot of companies or access to a lot of data in general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I talked to, and like factoring free there's companies out
Oh
there now that
yeah.
are sitting on a lot of data and trying to figure out how to monetize it. So
How to use it. Yeah.
I completely agree that data is going to be extremely valuable.
You've touched on like we've touched on a few things as to how or we kind of bounced around like what Eureka is, right? Like kind of high level, real high level stuff. But what is Eureka? Like, what are you guys doing in the freight tech space with Eureka to help brokers essentially?
Yeah. So really we're available for anybody that's got a request for proposal, request for a quote, a bid that a shipper sends to them that they're looking for some assistance in completing. And basically we take the bid as is, we do all the formatting, we do the research analysis, and then based on that contract start and end date, we help forecast pricing for them. So
Hmm.
consider it, or we like to think of it as like service enabled tech. So we meet them where they are. For example, we had a bid that came through that was just an ugly bid with protected sheets. It's got a lot of instructions. It was probably 1,000 lanes,
Wow.
and they had spaces in between the lanes. So anybody that's formatting and knows they need to upload it to a third party site or do some or just have the flexibility to manipulate the data in Excel,
Yeah.
it's a pain, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
we take all of that headache and work that they would typically do, give them back their nights and weekends, and um, analyze and then produce it right back into that protected sheet with our rates populated and some flexibility. We call it a reference sheet where they can actually manipulate based on margin, based on fuel, based on any type of preferences they have, um, and save them a lot of time doing it.
Yeah, so Kevin, I was you and I have talked a few different times and I
Yeah.
was a broker in my past life. So if I was doing this, like, I would probably do, God, maybe eight RFPs a quarter, maybe 12 a quarter at sometimes. Like, how would this essentially, like, I really resonate with you saying like you'll have your nights and weekends back because from 7 until 4, 7 till 5, I was busy running my freight, busy checking on loads, talking to customers. So I would spend 2 or 3 hours a night knocking these out. I would spend a Saturday morning getting up at 7 and working until noon to knock out these RFPs. So to me, like, it sounds like heaven, right? Like, it's like, holy crap, like I can get some time back and all I really have to do is just like, check through everything, put my final stamp on it, and it's done. But how do you guys go through and get some of these lanes, and how do you find out? I guess, how do you guys go about that?
Yeah.
Is it like a manual side? Are you guys is it with tech? Is it with AI? How are you guys going about like helping brokers do this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's a little bit of both, a little bit of everything you just said. So
Awesome.
um, there is a manual side where we're curating these rates based on the company and some of their internal data. So it's resonates with their behavior. Hey, I buy like this in this lane. So if I go and look at an external site or third party site and that rate says something totally different, it doesn't really help me.
Right.
Um, so one of the things we do is give them back information based on their buying habits compared to the market. Um, we get freight order and payment data. We have factoring data. We have this in our agreement with Truck Stop. We're looking at more partnerships coming up soon
Yeah.
where we will be able to utilize some additional data sources and data points and then be able to provide back that rate, forecast the rate based on that information that we have. So a little bit of all of that goes into our algorithms and then comparing
Mhm.
it versus others as well.
Now, something I've always struggled with, and I think a lot of brokers struggle with, is just some of the different factors that go into a rate, right? Like, it's not always like, oh, I just need a truck from XYZ to XYZ from Fresno to Florida, right? It's or Fresno to Orlando. It's there's other factors that go into it. So how do you guys, I guess, kind of feeding from your past life of moving produce and some of that stuff? I'm sure that there was times when you guys were moving multi-stop or fresh versus frozen. So how does an AI or a tech tool, I guess, help factor in some of those other things, right? Because I know there was a lot of time I'd be asked, there'd be 7 lanes of fresh, 7 lanes of frozen. There was a few that were multi-stop. So how can your tool, I guess, help with some of those other factors?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So one, we make sure that we're scrubbing the data as best as we can to get rid of those outliers. So data is only as good as what's coming in. So when we get data
Absolutely.
from brokers or when we're looking at things that might affect the price, we try to eliminate all of that, get all the noise, get all that out of there. Uh, and then when we're forecasting or trying to figure out the price, and what we're taking into account is like variability. So we want to give you like guardrail. We
Definitely.
want to tell you
Hmm.
here's a rate that's going to keep you or protect you, but based on your preferences. Do you want to be aggressive? Do you want to be conservative? Do you want us to look
Got it.
at fuel? Do you want us to look at breakthrough fuel? All of those things, we try to have that conversation up front. And then
Definitely.
that's what is fed in, and that's what helps produce those results that protect the customer or the broker from losing.
Yeah, like you don't want to, like, obviously you don't want to go through this entire like thousand plus bid and then realize, oh, they're trying to be really conservative with it or be really aggressive with their bid, and then you got to kind of run through them all again. So it makes sense, like you're going through and having these initial conversations, trying to
Yeah,
figure out, I guess, what best suits them, right?
correct. And then we take into account, to your point, right? We're looking at variability. We're looking at, is there a backfill opportunity from the data that you're providing?
Yeah.
Um, is there produce? Is there seasonality? Is it frozen where we need to take into account um, additional cost in there or hazmat? So all
Yeah.
those things we look at up front, which then goes into making sure we're giving you back an accurate rate there.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of tools on the market, right? I mean, you guys are one of a few different tools. There's, I think, FreightWaves has a similar style tool that can help. Green Screens is another one. There's a few out there that can help you with RFPs, help you with spot bidding, things like that. How do you guys, I guess, differentiate yourself from some of the competition out there in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so there are quite a few tools out there. Truck Stop, one of them. There's
Yeah,
like green screens. You mentioned um, FreightWaves with Sonar. So those tools are great, and they help in terms of being able to upload and get back like really quick rates
yeah.
based on the information those companies have. What we do is we actually work in concert with some of them, um,
Hmm.
and do the manual stuff as well with the formatting, the
So it's
forecast, and the
so it's
research.
less kind of what I've heard, Kevin. It sounds like it's less. It's not as quick. You guys are not as quick, so it's not going to be like, hey, I messed up and didn't get this RFP done today, and it needs to go back at 5 o'clock. It may not be, Eureka may not be the tool for that broker, but it's for the person who, they've got this RFP, they know they're going to send it in to their bigger customer, and they want some more of that hands-on as opposed to just feeding it into a system and then it's spitting back out rates, right?
Right.
Got
Right.
it. So
So our
that's
turnaround
cool.
time is basically 2 to 3 days. We do have
Oh, that's not
expedited.
bad.
If you need it back in 24 hours, we can do that as well. But you hit on it. It's that kind of consider it like an outsourced pricing team. So
Hmm.
the
I
industry
like
is
that.
going through some changes right now. Layoffs. Folks are trying to figure out how to keep costs down. So before I had a conversation with somebody, they were thinking about hiring a pricing person, analyst to come in, and they had their sales team that's going out. They've got these bids coming in. They're all kind of working on them. There's no real standard process.
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of fit in where, okay, You can have all your sales folks out there getting bids, send it to us. We then do the analysis, send it right back to them. And now you don't have to hire, as well as you've got kind of a standard process going on.
That is honestly, that's a great way to think about it. And I didn't even think about it that way, but for especially for smaller companies or growing companies that maybe don't want to spend for one or two pricing analysts or bid experts, right? It can really help um, bridge the gap in between some of these larger companies and smaller brokerages that want to like try to steal some lanes from some of these bigger brokers, right? Because it's I come from my experience is big broker from TQL. Obviously, a lot of the listeners know that, and then I also help scale a smaller brokerage. So I have both sides of that where I had all the data in the world with TQL. I could genuinely like get my rates really dialed in just based on like just all the data we had. But when I went to full sale, it was a lot tougher because we're a brand new company. We only have the data that's out there. So, who are those sources at the time? A couple of years ago, before Sonar really took off with a lot of their spot rates and contract rates, it was really just DAT, truck stop, and using a lot of the load board data. So, we didn't have like I said, I was going through all these bids and going off of load board data, going off of our internal data, talking to my carriers, like knowing people who could do this. And then it was like, okay, like, when you're talking to carriers about this, a lot of them, like, yes, they'll give you some rates and ideas of stuff, but then they also are like, after you tell them, and this isn't a bad thing. It's like with me, if a shipper tells me, hey, I'm going to have this project coming up, I'm going to be checking with them on it, right? Like, hey, like, do we get this? When is it moving? And so I would then have 10 or 12 carriers calling me and saying, hey, like, is this going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. And then it's just like, it causes a lot of like kinks in the system and can put in, can even turn off or alienate some of your carrier base if you're doing this a lot, and especially as a smaller group saying, hey, just calling for their bid for later on. It's not a good process. I don't think. I honestly, I've pissed off a lot of carriers doing it. And if I had something like Eureeka at the time that could basically be the back office of our pricing of our RFPs, it would have saved me a lot of time, a lot of headaches, and a lot of phone calls and emails too. So
Mm-hmm.
there's, from my end, I'm like, you know, uh, uh, foaming at the mouth because this is so, it saves so much time. It can save so much energy for brokerages and brokerage teams. How, I know you guys, um, have this new truck stop partnership. So how has that really like integrated a lot of like their tools, or has that helped with you guys with some of the data you guys are pulling? How has that partnership really like helped you guys for the long term for the betterment of the industry?
Yeah. So I think it's more toward the latter, and what you're saying, where it's going to allow us to um, utilize, if we have a mutual customer, there's the
Yeah,
ability to utilize some of that data that
definitely.
Truck Stop has to help in our process in looking at rates, and another data point that we can pull in to make sure, again, we're in within kind of that guardrails. And there's some,
Yeah,
the algorithms behind the scene that look at all that, but ideally it's another data point that now gives us help in determining the rate and the accuracy of that rate. um, so when we give it back to the customer, there's some more confidence in what we're providing. So it's
definitely.
still early on. We're working on,
Yeah,
webinars. There's more to come. We're going to start potentially writing some blogs. We're still in the works.
that's gonna be
Can't talk
cool.
about all of it, but yeah,
Oh, for sure.
we're going to be promoting that pretty soon.
No, I think the industry, I can't speak for the whole industry, but I can speak for myself and a lot of the brokerage teams that I know. I think that your tool is um, really going to change the way people look at RFPs. Like, like we touched on, there's a lot of companies that do these types of things, but it takes out kind of that hands-on traditional, like, pricing point. Sometimes I think we're geared too much towards tech, and we try to fix all of the problems within logistics with tech. And I think that there's a lot of automation that can happen within logistics, but there's still a lot of components that you have to have the human element, because no matter how much you train the AIs, the algorithms, um, there's always just going to be that like human nuance to certain things, like you said, like knowing certain peaks in certain areas that are going to get hot at certain seasons. Like an algorithm may not be able to take into consideration when it's watermelon season in Florida, or watermelon season in Georgia, or corn season in Georgia. So it some of those human elements that I think that tech misses, you guys are kind of bringing those into it.
Yeah, you brought up a good point where and we talked about earlier, like data. To your point about TQL time, like data, there's a lot of data now, so you can
Yeah,
get data, you can get results back quickly if you really want
instantaneous.
to, right? Instantaneous. You can upload it right now, um, and get a rate back immediately.
Yeah,
Now, getting it into a format where you can do that, and then again, going back to my point earlier, like, is that how you're going to buy it? Like, is that going to work for you? Is that rate going to be good for you?
exactly.
So when you're at full sale, the price that you might be putting out there versus when you're at TQL could be completely different,
Completely different.
just based on the size. So these, brokers are getting caught spending a lot of time, reminds me of the saying, right? Is the juice versus the squeeze? So they go ahead and they
Yes.
spend
Yes.
hours on these bids, and then they don't win anything, and then
I've
they go,
been
okay,
there.
whatever, and then it's gone. And talking about the standardization as well, one of the things we're working toward is we capture all this data. So these bids, as you've probably seen or heard, shippers are sending them out more frequently now
Yes.
in hopes of being closer to market pricing and staying competitive and getting, what they consider a fair price or a low price,
Yeah.
cost on that transportation movement. So if I just did it 3 months ago, it comes up again. Am I going to go ahead and start doing the same thing over and over and banging my head against the wall, not understanding why I'm losing or where I've got opportunity? And so
That's
trying
it.
to get insight into all of that is what we're looking to do, and helping brokers and asset-based folks figure out now.
Definitely. You touched on a great thing, is that shippers are moving to a quicker cycle of RFPs. I've heard from I meant to mention this earlier, but I've actually heard from a lot of like groups. I know Full Sail is one of them, that they've said a lot of shippers have moved to like a 1 month, where every 45 days they're looking at some of these bid cycles again, because they're hearing from online, from news sources,
Yeah.
the market is so low that they're just like,
Yeah.
okay, let's keep trying to push rates down. And it's if I'm getting bids back every 30 days, like I said, I was getting like 8 or 12 every quarter or every half year. If I was doing that every month, I would just spend my whole time 30 days out of the month bidding freight for this RFP. Because I mean, there were some lanes that were, they want bid out again, but it's like, you move two a year in this lane. Why am I bidding this again in October, when you're not going to move another one till January or December? But they want the rate because, hey, what if it increases to 4 or 10? It's just some of the logic. And I mean, I used to have a huge salt manufacturer that would always ask for bids.
Mm-hmm.
And they went with a lot of asset based carriers, asset based brokers. So I was always a lot higher. But they would always ask me for my rates, because I was one of the few, like I had a good relationship with the transportation manager, and she was just like, I can't use you with your rates being high, but like if I ever have situations where I need spot trucks, I need someone falls off it, after a certain period, like I'll reach out and use you. But it was like, why am I bidding 1,000 to 1,500 lanes every quarter to not win anything? I just knew I wasn't going to win, but it was like they had to have my bid in
Mm-hmm.
order to use me going forward. So it was like, for the 30 loads a quarter I was getting, yeah, it was nice, but it's like, it's truckloads of salt. Like it's 48,000, 44,000 pounds, 45,000 pounds. and I'm making $100 a load. So is it worth it?
Right.
Yes and no, because I had a lot of carriers that just took it like it was automatic for them. It was back hauls, it was front hauls. They had to get somewhere to another shipper. So it made sense, but it was like it was a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
for 3K a month, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this would have taken a lot of that strenuous work out of it. And as you said, like as they move towards these quicker bid cycles, you really have to be responding to them quickly and making sure
Right.
you're getting the most updated rates possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You're kind of hitting on the mini bid.
Yeah,
I don't call it craze, but new phenomenon where it's like I'm just gonna keep putting these out every 2 weeks, every month. I've heard different
yeah,
cadences of it, but they're putting them out. Yeah, they're putting them out uh, more often. Some of them are small, some of them are big, and it's a bit tedious. But if you want to play and you want to get the business, you got to participate, right?
absolutely.
You can't win if you don't play. So people are doing it, and then what I've also found is the disconnect between kind of the leadership team and the broker
Yeah,
analyst who's spending a lot of time on it, and there's a little misalignment between go out, bid on everything, be aggressive, blah
be
blah blah,
super aggressive. Yeah,
right? And then okay, what does that mean? One, it takes a lot of time to go and do all that, and then two, if we don't win, is it a bad thing? Like, do we win and then we're going to lose money later on? And the
right.
markets. So there's a lot that goes into it, which goes
Yeah,
back to like, yeah, I can get a rate immediately nowadays, but what does that rate truly mean for me? And you know, how do
it's
I best position my company and build a relationship? So
definitely,
the
it's tough.
collaboration with the shipper and your carriers and getting a much more call it like cohesive relationship in there
Definitely.
is going to be what I see in the future. So there's the bids
Yeah.
probably continue, but folks that um, build on these relationships and maybe start out small, but become a go-to carrier, really reliable broker, build out a relationship with the shipper, still participate, but just know their business, know that business so well that it's tough to
It's
get
tough for
out.
them to phase you out, right?
Yeah, I hear about that, and you mentioned it, right? So there's the thing about like incumbents, and so when I was a shipper, and I hear it now is, oh, so I'm gonna go bid on this RFP. 80% is already gonna go to the incumbent. Why am I wasting my time?
Yeah.
Some of that's true, but what happens is that incumbent who is in there builds up their carrier network, is able to get great rates because they've got this network now of front haul and back haul. So when they're pricing,
Yep.
it's just lower. So it's not that they're necessarily just always going to go with the incumbent, but this person has worked hard to build this network, and so their rates just
They're always going to be a little bit better.
automatically become better. And
Yeah.
right, and as a shipper, I don't. How many times do I want to keep onboarding somebody new?
Yeah. That's something I was talking with Matthew Chapa again yesterday about was how often do shippers really want to spend time with onboarding new carriers or brokers? Like it's not really as advantageous for them as what brokers think. Like it's it's not as like if you're a major shipper or even a mid-sized shipper that's moving 30 or 40 truckloads a month, is it really advantageous for you to every 6 months or every year um, find a new broker partner, right? If they're doing an okay job, and I say okay, right? Like not every broker is going to do great, but if they're doing an okay job, they're not having a lot of service failures, the rates are okay, they're steady. Um, is it worth it to you to say, let me get rid of this okay carrier to bring on an unknown that doesn't know any of my business, and then it's going to take them, this 6 month period that this broker's already been working with me, it's going to take them 3 to 6 months to really learn, get everything, the processes down, get all of our normal routines down. And then am I going to judge them in 6 months and then get rid of them? Like it's brokers kind of don't think that way, but it's also, like you said, it's RFPs whether 80% goes to the incumbent or not, there's still 20% of freight that may be available. And I've won some of those smaller, like, oh, here's a lane. And then you end up with 10 lanes. And then you end up with 30% of the business, 50% of the business, because it's just like, oh, you got lucky on one, or your rate was good on one, or they've seen you bidding for 6 months for 6 different RFPs. And they're finally like, we're done with this carrier. Let's give it to Tommy. He'll, if he doesn't do a good job, we'll find someone else. Like, it becomes kind of one of those crapshoots when they're kind of trying to pick a new provider, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing, Kevin, is really going to help change a lot of what brokers do, how brokers look at RFPs and how they approach them. I know we're getting a little bit close to time here, but are there anything that Eureeka does, Kevin, or you want to touch on with Eureeka that I maybe didn't touch on, that you kind of want some of the listeners to know about, or anything you guys have that's maybe upcoming? We can get a sneak peek, anything like that you guys want to talk about that we can finish up on here.
Yeah. So thanks for that. And thanks for this. This has been great.
Of course, man. I had a great time.
Yeah. So we have some more partnerships that are going to be announced soon.
Ooh, okay.
We're working on that, and that'll be coming out hopefully before the end of the year.
Awesome.
And we're building out some of that product piece of it just based on the feedback I've gotten, right? And there's dozens of factors that go into an RFP, and there's a lot of different columns and information on a sheet. So we're capturing some of that to just ease the process of getting through that uploading bidding process with us, so that you'll be able to put in the information that's really relevant and some of the preferences that you have on how you want to approach the bid, and we'll take some of that into account more automatically.
Okay.
And save some time, even more time than we're currently doing with the process we have in place. So more to come.
That's exciting.
Looking forward in first quarter 2024, and we'll be
awesome. For that. We're really excited for you, Kevin. I'm rooting for you. We are welcome on the podcast anytime. When as we get closer to the new year, we'll get something rescheduled. We'll talk again for sure. I really appreciate your time, Kevin. Thanks for coming on. If you guys want to learn more about Kevin, you want to learn more about Eureeka and what they're doing, Kevin, how can everyone at home that's listening to the podcast, how can they find Eureeka and find some of your content online?
Yeah, great. So you can catch me. I'm posting quite a bit on LinkedIn. It's Kevin Miles. And then you can reach me at kevin@eureekabi.com, EUREEKABI.com, and the website www.eureekabi.com.
Awesome. And if you guys are looking for them, all the links for Kevin and Eureeka will be in the show notes or in the description on YouTube. If you guys like today's podcast, please make sure you give it 5 stars or a thumbs up. And don't forget to check out the newsletter. Those dues drop on Monday and Wednesday over on ThinkFreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Tommy.